Got your key.
Uh,
Okay? All right, thank you.
It's
So thank you very much for the introduction. Um, Dear guests, good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Recycling and Circular Economy session. With the incredibly fast pace of digitalization and latest technologies, the world is witnessing a rising demand for minerals. The World Bank reports that the mineral intensity for clean energy transition finds that the production of minerals such as graphite, lithium, cobalt, and copper could increase by nearly 500% by 2050. To meet the growing demand for clean energy, technologies, and to increase sustainability in other domains. The National Industrial Development and Logistic Program, NIDLIB, estimates Saudi Arabia's untapped mineral deposits at $1.3 billion. All that is music to the economical aspect of growth, innovation, and businesses. But how is that affecting the environmental aspect of sustainability? We are seeing global leaders and hearing them discussing a roadmap to establish resilient minerals and green metal value chains. But to what extent is circularity taken in consideration towards net zero? What methodology and technology can be used to ensure a prosperous fourth industrial revolution while preserving the Earth's sources and avoiding negative impact to the environment? I'm Dina Al-Nahdi, board member of the National Mining Committee, CEO of Intech Environmental Technology, and chairman of Circular Economy Company. I've been working in the domain of sustainability for the past 20 years in various sectors, including mining, and I'm delighted to highlight these important issues with our esteemed panelists. With us today is Mr. Khalid Al-Rashid, COO of Saudi Investment Recycling Company, CIRC, as well as CEO of GEMS, with a 28 years experience in the power industry. Welcome.
Thank you, Dina.
Nicole Vogt, Managing Director and Partner at Boston Consulting Group in Germany. She has more than 15 years of experience as a consultant and as a core member of BCG's industrial goods practice. She leads the firm's global metals activities focusing on sustainability and is the author of several reports on this topic. Welcome. Dr. Patience Mupufu, CEO of Insight Mining Experts, a multi-award winner as one of the most influential women in mining, a global mining sustainability thought leader, ESG, executive leadership coach and woman in STEM advocate. She has over 2 decades of resource industry leadership experience and has extensive cross-functional experience as a successful leader from mine to market. She held a number of leadership positions, primarily developing commercial and sustainability strategies for multinational mining companies. Welcome, it's an honor.
Thank you.
And Dr. Morgan Bazilian is the director of the Payne Institute for Public Policy and professor in Colorado Schools of Mines. As we say in Arabic, ahlan wa sahlan, welcome everybody.
حياك الله.
So, just to lay the base of what we're talking about today, circular economy lays off a blueprint for global and national actions to benefit businesses financially with circular practices while preserving environmental sustainability. Through rethinking strategies and tweaking business models while curating actions as well as ESG reporting and building capacities. So allow me to start the discussion with Mr. Khalid. Saudi Arabia's vision and the Saudi Green Initiative targeting 94% of landfill diversions by 2035, which increased the sector's contribution into the national GDP by more than $40 billion. CIRC is working on implementing an ambitious plan to be the largest recycling facility in the region, recycling almost all materials, if not all. So, how is the recycling infrastructure proposed to achieve this target? And to what extent will the circular economy methodologies enable this transition?
Thank you, Dina, for having me first here and the introduction. And I hope that by end, inshallah, of the panel discussion, it will be fruitful. Let me first start with a brief background about the company, the SIRC, Saudi Investment Recycling Company. As part of the kingdom transformation, the leadership of the country, they have noticed that the degradation in our, unfortunately, the environmental degradation. And as per the World Bank, the total cost of the degradation is more than 86 billion Saudi riyal annually. This is a huge amount, huge loss because of not taking care of our environment. In 2017, the company was established by the Public Investment Fund by no less than a royal decree, and it works under the umbrella of MIWA, the Ministry of Environmental and Water and Agriculture, as a policymaker, and under the regulator, MAWAN, the National Center for Waste Management. The main objective of the company is to promote the investment in the sector and to attract the local and the international investor to come and invest. And as you have highlighted just now, the total investment that will be spent in the next 12 to 15 years, about 30 to 40 billion Saudi riyal. And SIRC, with its local and international partners, we will be part to contribute into that investment. Since you have highlighted the circular economy, I just want to highlight one thing, that today SIRC operating model is based on the circular economy. Today we're having 8 companies working under SIRC, operating for basically SIRC group, namely GIMS in the industrial hazardous waste. We have the Wazin working for or operating under the medical hazardous waste, Yadoom under the municipal solid waste, Electa basically taking care of all the and the metal waste. We have Aziad, that's part of SIRC group, taking care of all the lubricants and used cooking oil, Akam basically, which is part of SIRC and taking care of all the construction and demolition waste, which is part of actually the mining all the minerals. And last but not least, SAIL, which is a newly company established, taking care of all the spills and hazardous. Now, back again to your question. Today, SIRC, we have started one of the major initiatives, which is the Riyadh cluster. And basically, Riyadh cluster is targeting by 26-27, hopefully that once we start the project, is to implement what's so-called the integrated solution. And the integrated solution basically here is a solution whereby which we will basically it's not the typical the waste treatment, let's say, methods and ways that been implemented elsewhere, like the waste to energy, which is the easiest way to treat and get the landfill diversion or implement or achieve the landfill diversion. However, with the integrated solution, we will be able to deploy a complete solution that considers the waste to energy about 22%, consider production of what's so-called refuse dry fuel about 11%, considering the organic to produce the compost, and last but not least, 30% from what's so-called the recyclables. Today, the total waste from the municipal is around 16 million tons per year, and by 2035, we're expecting the number to be around 30 million.
Yeah.
So consider 30% from the 30 million is almost like 2 million tons recyclables. Part of that, big part of that will be the metal basically. And this is the first project, and we have started with our partners, the international partners. We're starting to develop, and we're hoping that by 26, 27 we'll be achieving the first target, landfill diversion of 70%, hoping that by 2035 for Riyadh to achieve the 94%. That's a nutshell.
That's amazing, and I don't want to be biased by my comments, but I mean, the CERC, they are one of our clients, and we know in depth to what extent they are actually implementing what they're saying. So it's not talk, they're walking the walk. It is a process. Nothing like this can happen overnight, but the ambition and the actual implementation that's happening is superb. So hats off to CERC and what you are doing for not only Saudi Arabia, but the entire region. And creating a role model, actually, absolutely, for a global path. Now, picking up on the part where was mentioned, the construction and basically the metals, I would like to look at you, Nicole. So you're a champion of the rethinking materials and processes. So how decarbonization can take place in the steel industry?
Yeah, happy to take this point. Yeah, so thanks for pointing out that we need much more circularity. So just looking at the steel industry, which has 7% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. So if we want to reduce that, we need to decarbonize. How do we do this? I mean, first of all, we need to increase circularity, and this means waste treatment, waste sorting, bringing the things back into the cycle. So just computations we have done in 2030, if we don't increase our collection rate, we will be 225 million tons scrap short just in 2030. So which means we also need to decarbonize beyond scrap. And how do we do this in the steel industry? We switch the technology to DRI EAF, and for that we need much more high-grade ore. And looking at the ore, we need to mine, we need more virgin ore. Giving that, we are also short on that. We are missing globally for 2030 40 million tons of pellet capacity. And with that, we also half of that, we don't even have the feed discovered yet. So to decarbonize in metals industry, which has a large share of global greenhouse gas emissions, we desperately need to work on circularity, feed back the scrap we are having, plus also focus on low carbon mining, high grades ore, but with a low carbon load. Only if we have those two things, we will be able to decarbonize.
Okay, amazing. So walking with that, to the next question with you, Dr. Patience. So mining is currently responsible from 4 to 7% of greenhouse gas emissions globally. Mines theoretically can fully decarbonize, exclusive of fugitive methane, obviously, through operational efficiency, electrification, and renewable energy use. Multinational companies are taking action to implement methods of decarbonization and play a role in emission reduction, as Nicole has just mentioned. So with your focus on providing insights on critical minerals for net zero emissions by 2050, please explain the relationship of decarbonization and the role of recycling.
Okay. Thank you so much, Adina, for inviting me for this panel. I would like to just take the audience on this journey. Can you imagine if you need 4 grams of a metal? Think about this. Be it it's lithium, be it it's platinum, be it it's gold. You need to generate more than a ton of waste. Am I correct? More than a ton. The head grade, for example, of gold or platinum, it's about 4 grams per ton. That's waste, right? You will need to reprocess that and concentrate it to take it to 200 grams per ton. you generate another waste. You now need to smelt it. You now need to refine it. There is waste. You now need to dump those tailings into the tailings dump. You need to rehabilitate, right? I want to paint this picture because you've got to understand that mining produces products that make a difference in life, but it also generates waste. That's number one. This is a case for recycling. Think about recycling. What are the key drivers for recycling right now? You have heard about critical minerals. We will have a supply deficit. Think about lithium used for batteries. How much lithium are we going to need? How much cobalt are we going to need? Platinum group metals. How much nickel are we going to need? All these materials, there's a huge supply gap. And let me tell you something. We may be underestimating the problem. We are sitting with a huge problem. Primary supply is not going to make it. Even if you try to put in more capital and you say, yes, we'll ramp up the projects, but it's not going to fill up the gap. Data shows it. And I think it's business unusual that leaders should start thinking of alternative supply, and that's recycling. So how do we do that? We need to start thinking of circular economy. We need to start thinking of policy change to ensure that we incorporate recycling in our processes. Can you imagine you produce this metal, just track it, metal accounted. You produce 99.99 of lithium. It goes into a battery to the market. This is the current model. You mine, you process, you refine, you sell it to OEMs, like the Teslas, right? You forget about it. That's the business model of the current mining. But we need to start changing that business model because mining says, we've done our part, bye-bye, thank you. But when we think of circular economy, let's think about that metal, account for it. When it goes to Tesla, why don't we bring it back? Why doesn't it come back? We have the processing capacity as mining. We can bring it back, we can reprocess it. We can now improve their efficiencies. Why don't we invest in technology to ensure we can reprocess that metal and reuse it? How about our cell phones? We've got our cell phones here. So it needs a complete mindset shift, but it needs leadership at a policy level. Because as long as we don't have the circular economy at a policy level to say we need to recycle every single item that contains the critical mineral, we are going to be falling short. And we'll fall big time short because the global challenges are continuing to be here. They will make us not invest the capital. Think about the war that we have in Ukraine right now. How many investors have got the money to put a lot of capital for the mining projects? It's a lot of money. You think about the lead time of these critical minerals, 15 years for some of the mines. Circular economy, important. That's my case for recycling. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You tapped on very important topics, and I think we will come back to another part of what you mentioned. But I'm going to now use the policy stressing that you just requested, and I'm going to look to Dr. Morgan, stressing on the importance of sustainability in the mining sector, whether with the reduction of water use or reuse, energy efficiencies, and for better carbon management. To what extent are policies in place in order to achieve this?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Tina, for having me join the panel, and to the Future Minerals Forum for having us here. Look, the concepts of recycling or efficiency that this panel has discussed and then previous panels mentioned are not new, right? We've had these vocabulary words and concepts for decades. So the technological ability we have to improve efficiencies or recycle or move to circular economies largely exists. And so the gap between that knowledge and what's actually happening is largely policy. And the way to think about policy, or one way to think about policy is all about priority, right? If something is prioritized, you can make a policy and then you can fund that policy. If it's not prioritized, then you'll get nothing done. It's pretty simple human nature. So if we prioritize it, sure, we can make policies that incentivize recycling and circular economy. We could do it right away. It doesn't take very much time once something's prioritized. But have we prioritized the words you see on the screen above you, recycling, substitution, and the circular economy? Can you think of anywhere that prioritizes those words? Any industry that prioritizes those words?
Saudi Arabia.
Besides Saudi Arabia?
Proudly we say that.
Yes. The answer is no. And so once we get to the prioritization, and the prioritization comes from the economics and security incentives of something are much stronger than the environmental drivers in almost every area of policy. Mm-hmm. So if you believe you're going to attack the problem because of the environment, you're unlikely to get to the prioritization and funding you need. So you attack it through economic development, through security, through economic activity, I like your word a lot, think of recycling as more supply. If you think of it as supply, you can run it through your accounting practice, and then recycling becomes something that's not a 1970s hippie concept, but something that's going to hit your bottom line, right? So you've been at this for a long time. And so the last thing I'll say is that the hard part in this is that you have to think across the supply chain. And my colleague from the School of Mines talked about systems thinking last time. If you think about this just within mining, you're going to miss almost everything. So you have to think about it in terms of the entire supply chain, from digging up rocks to processing them to going to advanced manufacturing. And then you have a chance of including circularity or recycling within your thinking. And the last thing is that the way we talk about these things typically at big, lovely events like this, and we talk about critical minerals and mining, is we talk about them as some sort of homogeneous big group of things. But steel is very different than the market for neodymium, right? Copper is very different than the market for magnesium and nickel. Mm-hmm. They have different stakeholders, they have different supply chains, they have different recycling rates, they have different markets, they have different everything. And so if we try to stuff all these things into one basket and call them minerals or critical minerals and think about recycling, you'll come up short because there's no way to handle all of them together. So thank you for the question.
Okay, so actually what you're saying is that we as non-government need to lobby and need to basically have a mindset, okay, our own mindset of understanding the benefits of circular economy that will return on the businesses, irrelevant of having rules and regulations or not. And maybe, again, the word lobbying, to have it and as a policies that will help the whole supply chain, because it's not about one a mine, or it's about, it's the whole supply chain that needs to complete this whole cycle. So I think we all play a big role then in raising the awareness and educating about sustainability mining. Sure. And how to reach the real will, because if there's a will, there's a way, but having the real will. Okay, so we had a beautiful discussion before we came on the stage, and I would actually like to move away from the Q&A and have that beautiful discussion and flowness that we had, because I'd love that everybody has the benefit of, the juice of what you guys were saying. So let's throw in a question of how does a mine of the future look like in the view of circular economy from the different aspects of it? So you go ahead, start. And please, it's an open discussion, so we want everybody to jump in. Nicole, Patience, and Morgan.
I'll start with what we were doing from the circular economy, what we're doing actually. Today, Circ basically, we have two companies focusing on basically the metal and waste, the electronic and electrical equipment, and that will definitely contribute to the circular economy big time. The expected it's about, I think, 1 million ton of waste from the we have from the construction and demolition, which is related big time to the industry. I think it's about 25 million ton per year. Just if we consider that the two companies, that Electa and ACAM, will contribute to the circular economy and will be part of that. We're here to make sure that circular economy concept being implemented. Maybe if you recall during the discussion, we're saying most of the all the companies actually, they always look at the bottom line. What is the bottom line? And no one is really care about the bottom line. It's not only the figure, how much that we have saved from carbon,
That's
how
true.
much is that impacting the environment. And
That's true.
again, part of the discussion, the ESG.
And there was a beautiful suggestion, actually, and a concept that came up in this discussion, which is that businesses should not only look at, the bottom line in sense of numbers and financials, right? But if it became incremental and mandatory to look at what are the carbon emissions, for instance,
Absolutely.
as part of the bottom line.
It
becomes a direct look.
We're having Dina here in Kingdom. I'll speak about Kingdom. We have responsible companies, the big companies, Aramco, Sabic, Ma'aden, Saudi Electricity Company, and the big ones, responsible companies. And I know that they're doing initiatives towards, they don't need the regulations and policy to start implementing the circular economy. They started that because of sensing of the responsibility. And that's what we're doing. We're working closely with the big companies to make sure that circular economy concept will be implemented and they will reap the benefit from implementing the circular economy.
So stewardship. We're
Yes,
looking at
absolutely.
stewardship,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Go ahead.
Yeah, and as you say, we need to look at the ecosystem. Yeah, and yes, we look at bottom line, but I would postulate that CO2, the emissions, will become a currency. So your question, what will a future
Carbon
mine
credits.
look like?
Yep.
I would like to have that. On each pellet they are selling, there's kind of a tag on it, how much carbon is in it. And so we can pass it through the supply chain, and at the end, the steel, the aluminum, the copper comes into an automotive, and they just add everything up. And this would be my future vision for not only the mine but the whole ecosystem and supply chain. And I think once we have that done, circularity will just happen or needs to happen, because otherwise we cannot have a low carbon tag on those individual materials.
Nicole, it's like you're saying money talks, right? Money talks. But what you just said, which is it's carbon credits. Carbon credits is the future's money.
Yes.
So the more it can be influenced into the whole value chain, the more that everybody's actually looking into how to, gain these carbon credits by lowering their emissions, etc. There was another thing, Patience. You're not jumping in with what you talked about before. You mentioned the beautiful concept of leasing the metals.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Please elaborate.
Okay, so maybe before I talk about leasing of the metal, the mine of the future in my mind, think about this. We talk about carbon credits. And I think you did mention something about incentives, right? If policymakers or companies, they feel there's no incentive, nothing happens, or they don't prioritize it. But can you imagine you buy a gold or you buy a lithium product that has got a premium? So there will be different types of metals. You can have gold. It will be gold premium because of the way that it's done. It's full circular economy for that mine. So when it has a premium, the share price of that company will go up. I foresee this happening in the mine of the future, because only when mining companies get an incentive and they know there is the economics, which makes sense, they will do it. They will do it.
Exactly. And do you guys think that incentivizing each other would also play a role? So we're talking about resources and sources, right? And not having enough sources actually to cover the future and the fourth industrial revolution with all that's coming up. And we were talking about the recycling and how the recycling actually should be a resource for another industrial direction. So it's minimizing actually taking out the sources
Absolutely.
and using the recycled materials as a source and as a so-called new raw material, right? Instead of going in for that. So this is exactly the circular economy, which is also economical. It should be more beneficial. It should cost less actually than the actual raw material that's coming out from our sources. So
But traditionally, industry fights these things, right? So
Very
you,
true.
You put into place regulation or you put into place policy, and the industry says, "Look, we want certainty, but we're going to wait till there's certainty to do the sort of minimum needed for regulation." But what we're seeing now, and we can take some clues from oil and gas, is that companies are leaning into this because they believe that in the future, exactly what Precious has said, that these things are going to be priced and they're going to be valuable. And you already see this in the financial community. So the financiers of the big infrastructure projects or infrastructure sector in general are saying, look, either you deal with these issues of sustainability, recycling, environment, or we're not going to fund you, or your cost of capital will be higher.
Yes.
And so if the finance people say that, the companies are leaning in beyond regulations.
very true.
And of course, it's a historic time for the mining industry, because you can say that all of a sudden, for the first time in 10,000 years, the industry can be at the forefront of providing a societal good. Right? You're going to provide the minerals needed for energy transitions to clean energy, to solve climate change, to produce next generation defense systems, et cetera. And you have the benefit that you get better cost of capital, and it'll help your permitting and your social license to operate, which traditionally have all been hampered by not doing these things. And so you asked us, Tina, before, talk about the positive things. You have a historic, once in a generation or multiple generation opportunity to do this, and it's not for the traditional reasons of, say, some kind of social good or environment. It's because it will increase your bottom line and it'll rapidly grow your ability to mine and perform.
Amazing, thank you. Well, unfortunately, we have 1 minute left. Time flies really fast. So, a 10-second takeaway.
Yes. Circ is your partner for circular economy.
All right. Nicole?
Yeah, basically, look at the process over the ecosystem, go from linear to circular.
Thank you very much. Yes.
We need to think differently, completely. And I didn't answer your question on the rent of the metal.
Yeah.
We will foresee the metal being sent directly to the OEMs, but it will be rented. They won't be selling it to them, and then they have to bring it back. Thank you.
And I think change the narrative to positive. Stop being defensive and be part of the great future, the future of minerals.
Amazing. Thank you very much. So I think that at the end, it's all about adjusting the mindsets, adjusting the business models from the linear to the circular economy, making sure that businesses, governments, and individuals understand and realize that it's an actual economical benefit. environmental, social, which actually makes it sustainable. I thank you all very much for this enlightening session. I thank everybody for listening, and thank you very much.
Thank you.